Hi folks, James here. Welcome to the Spiro Circle. Today I wanted to talk about deepfakes. You know, those videos or voice recordings that make it sound like someone said something or looks a certain way, usually made with artificial intelligence. We all have an aunt or uncle that's been scrolling through Facebook and believes some AI generated image telling him or her some extravagant or crazy fake news. But I want to go a bit deeper than that. Deepfakes are incredibly dangerous. They can trick people into giving personal information online or over the phone. They can spread misinformation or fake news, as I just said our uncles and aunts do on Facebook. But more importantly, they can expose businesses to real threats. One of the companies I spoke to today was Clarity. The co-founder and CEO, Michael Matias, is making it the company's mission to help companies in the recruitment stages. That is, when they're hiring someone, they want to make sure the person they're looking at and the person they're communicating with is actually that person. Now, you might think that recruitment is quite a niche area to tackle deepfakes, but the consequences of hiring someone else can be catastrophic. You could hire a spy from a nation state like North Korea or China. You could have your secrets or code exposed to competition. The consequences are far reaching, and the HR recruitment areas, they're not designed or trained to tackle these kinds of issues. So I spoke to Michael about some of these and what his company Clarity does to fix it. Now, it was very nice to have Michael on the podcast. We go back a few years when I helped produce his show, 20-Minute Leaders. He had a podcast for a couple of years. We started this episode today with him reminding me that we worked on more than 100 episodes together, and I couldn't believe it. Anyway, it was lovely to have him on the show, and I thank him for his time and his great insights. For those who aren't familiar with deepfakes or the true threat that this AI technology can have, I urge you to listen. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me here, James. Really excited to be here.
We've gone back a few years because we worked together in a brief capacity when we were running your podcast, 20-Minute Leaders, and now you're a guest on mine. So I just want to thank you, and we see how things go full circle. But
Absolutely.
we're
Well,
not.
James, we did. You're saying for a small period. For context, we published more than 100 articles together on the CTech platform, which gave a lot of amazing impact, especially in the Stand with Israel campaign that we had in the start of the war. So thank you for contributing to my project and for spreading the information. I appreciate the partnership here.
Of course, it's wonderful, and I love how we can bounce off each other's work and content, and it leads us to where we are today. But I want to talk about something that you're doing outside of podcasting, which is your work at Clarity. So you're the co-founder and CEO of Clarity. You guys are a deepfake, cyber protection, HR. Talk me through exactly what you folks do, and then we'll get into it because there's much to discuss.
Right. So the world is changing, and deepfakes are one way in which the world is changing. The ability for people to use generative AI not only to create amazing marketing campaigns and great content, and personalized therapist in many capacities, but not generative AI also enables people to create new identities and to change their own identity, whether it's on a live video call, whether it's a fake resume, or whether it's a fake a document forging an identity, and that has a lot of implications on businesses. So when deepfakes started rising, my team and I thought, wow, this is going to be a big disruptor to many business processes, like transferring money through phone confirmations. Chase has the well-known "my voice is my password" and term, and that's not the case anymore. So what happens when we can no longer rely on the way in which somebody looks and feels over a call? Well, it disrupts these business processes, and one of these processes is hiring. And in a post-COVID world where we hire and onboard people remotely all over the world, because talent exists everywhere and companies want the best talent regardless of where they live and stay, um, it becomes paramount to be able to know that the person you're hiring, one, exists and is not some bad actor that's forging to be a real person, and that the person you're interviewing and that's going through the candidacy process is indeed the person that shows up on the first day of work. And so we've tailored our mission and our solution towards helping businesses make sure that they don't hire any bad actor into their organization.
Fantastic, thank you. Why did you focus on the hiring process? Because there are many ways that deepfakes can become apparent, and we were talking just before this episode, and one of the most famous examples can be how bad actors can affect elections, or they can plant incorrect, incriminating evidence in the form of tape recordings or scams, as you mentioned. Why did you focus on this specifically as a market?
There's many areas where deepfakes pose disruption and breaches of trust in these interactions, and we mentioned the areas like financial transactions, areas of customer service, where customers are calling their bank and they're trying to do account takeover, convincing their bank representative, especially in private banking, that they are who they say they are. And in reality, when you talk to the businesses and you look at where these disruptions are happening, one of the main areas is indeed hiring fraud. And as a startup, when we ask ourselves, where could we make the biggest impact with customers, and where can we grow in the healthiest way as a startup needs to, right? With the right partners, with the right customers, where can we solve a problem in such a unique way that as we build expertise in it, we will do it the best in the world? And the more we dove into these use cases, we realized that not only are deepfakes impacting hiring, but the whole hiring process is broken from a trust perspective from the get-go. And the reason is simple. Security teams never interjected with the hiring process. There's the HR team that recruits people, and then there's the security team that protects the organization, and traditionally from firewalls against network threats and application security against malicious SQL injections, etc. Those are the classic cyber solutions. And all of a sudden, we found that there's this whole paradigm in business called recruitment that has never experienced what security means because they didn't really need to. Recruiters had the tools to identify themselves when people were in person and deepfakes did not exist. And so as we started working with our partners and customers, we realized, wow, it's not only about detecting deepfakes. It really is about being this security co-pilot for HR teams and recruiters, which means deeply integrating into their entire workflow. It's quite a lot of integrations and quite a lot of systems. It's speaking their language and servicing our insights and our solutions in ways that not only do cybersecurity experts understand, but ways that recruiters also understand. And how do we then recommend actions based on that? So building those intimate relationships and understanding into what does it mean to bring security with hiring, that really became the epicenter of clarity. And the more we dove into it, the more excited we got. We're working with some awesome partners and customers now to verify candidates that are going through. And we see that we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more we can do. And it's all about really getting into the shoes of the recruiters and the CISO mindset. So that's how we got into this.
Because you and I have been so involved in AI and so involved in tech for so many years that the average person may not realize that actually you can be speaking to someone and it's not who you think you are. So talk now, and I assume the viewers and listeners today are at least somewhat tech savvy, but talk to the layman out there. I mean, talk to them about the possibilities that deepfakes can cause. Everyone remembers that first video clip of Will Smith eating spaghetti, right, from 3 or 4 years ago, and it looked obviously like a computer program from the 1990s. But fast forward a year and a half, and actually it looks pretty compelling. So talk to me about a bit about the status of these frauds, whether it's in job interviews in your instance, or maybe you and I, maybe one of us is a deepfake right now.
Yeah.
You're probably running your software through this to make sure that I'm who I say I am. Talk about the status of the technology that you folks are battling. Because it reminds me
Right.
of a story that I wrote just earlier about how cybersecurity, maintaining cybersecurity isn't enough. You have to always be evolving and always be chasing those threats. So, talk to me a bit about what those threats look like.
Yeah, I think that now we've really hit this inflection point where it's really is hard to tell the difference between footage that we see online that has been captured by a camera versus those that are captured on Sora 2 or VO3. And it goes with the terms. There's Sora 2, right? When we started Clarity, there wasn't even Sora. It didn't exist. So we're at a point where 3 years into this into the deepfake world, and we're about 3 years into ChatGPT, right? 3 years ago was the ChatGPT moment, and back then we said, we see this wave of language models coming in and commoditizing our LLM interactions, but there's a bigger wave coming right after that, which is the voice duplication, and we see companies like 11 Labs, taking off, right? I believe they're a decacorn by now, and if not, then they probably will be soon. And pretty much every organization today uses 11 Labs for customer service, for marketing materials. You can clone anybody's voice with about 4 seconds, and it sounds really compelling. And the next layer above that is the video, which has its additional complexities. I think that the adage an image is worth 1,000 words speaks to the complexity that when you have an image and you have running images, it's not just an LLM outputting words. You actually have to devise pixel perfect footage that runs with sound and that is consistent with the physics of nature. And it's gotten there, and it is there, and we see some amazing uses of it. I encourage anybody to try out Sora 2 and go into the social feed of Sora 2, and you can see Albert Einstein skateboarding.
Einstein, skateboarding, is that a deepfake or is that a real image?
It probably was a deepfake because it was in color, and the last I remember, I recall Einstein did not
That's
have
why you're the
color.
CEO.
Right. But I may be wrong, and maybe he did have color at some point in his lifetimes. But in any case, that was a pretty good indication that it's not. And I think that it's no longer a question of will we reach a point where when we talk to somebody online or when we see somebody's face online, there is an equally likely scenario that it's an avatar or a full-on deepfake. And a deepfake, by the way, is the distinction that it is somebody that's now speaking live, but they've altered their face and their voice, like a really cool filter. An avatar can be, just a bot, a cloud computer that joins the call and speaks on behalf of somebody. By the way, Zoom is very actively pursuing a product where every person will have a digital avatar that goes on meetings instead of them, which makes sense. If we're sending a note taker to take notes, why don't we just have the note taker speak on our behalf? And so I think that we can definitely, when you ask about the status of where we are, we can most definitely assert that we are at or very near the point um, where AI footage is deeply integrated into our not only our entertaining lives but our business lives as well. I'm personally looking forward to that day, and I see how CISOs and enterprises are gearing up for this world by adopting solutions that can help them not only distinguish is this a deepfake or not, because that really is not the right question to ask here. It's a question of who am I speaking to? Do they have authority to do what they're claiming to do, to represent who they're claiming to represent? And what actions and decisions can I make based on this interaction? It really is a question of authorization and identity, which, if you look at the latest cyber trends, identity is amongst the most prudent cybersecurity trends. We all were proud when CyberArk was acquired for, I believe, a quarter of for $25 billion, and that really speaks to the volume of complexity that companies need solutions for here.
Absolutely. I remember that day quite well when CyberArk was purchased by Palo Alto, or at least when it was announced, and it was the start of the complete consolidation kind of the industry. What you're seeing now is a bunch of these different companies all coming together
Sure.
and consolidating. what are because you're right, AI is everywhere now. It's changing everyone's world. Your job and your role is probably becoming much bigger each year, I guess, right? So
Mhm.
do you see yourselves at Clarity, and maybe you on a personal level, do you see yourselves expanding outside of where you currently are in terms of where you help your customers, who I'm guessing are the companies? Is that right?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Businesses like the
The
ones
bit, yeah, yeah.
we buy food from and that we watch movies from and we buy computers from, those are the businesses we service. And it's time will tell. I think that we are, as a startup, our job is to do what we do best in as narrow and as focused manner as possible. That's what we're doing with hiring security, and hiring turns out to be one of the most important and complex business processes. A good hire can take the business to skyrocket, and a bad hire can crumble a business. By the way, a bad hire, which is a security threat, can cause an existential risk to a business. And so we see that it's going to be a journey to build what we believe is a category defining solution that protects organizations from hiring fraud. It requires us to have enterprises adopt a new modality around security. Whether we'll expand to other areas where deepfakes live in, perhaps, but I think it'll take time, and we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we properly define and solve for the current problem statement.
Who are the current people who are frauding these companies? In your eyes, who are the black hats?
I would say that
I
there's
should
three.
probably take my black hat off if I ask that question, but yeah.
I think it's dark blue. I think you're good. Um, I think there's three very common types of enemies, bad actors, however you'll call them, adversaries. One are nation state actors, and you have nation states that are targeting enterprises in other states where they want to, learn information. They want to steal money. They want to disrupt critical infrastructure. One of the reasons hiring fraud has become top of mind for many companies is that uh, a lot of Fortune 500s over the last few months have discovered that they accidentally hired North Korean IT workers, and unintentionally, right? Maybe some companies who do want to hire some North Korean talent, maybe they're really good at what they do. But it turns out that those specific talents did not disclose they're from North Korea, and in fact, they posed as U.S. citizen employees earning critical access to sensitive information. Outcome of this type of thing is that some of them have exfiltrated code, some of them have deployed code to production, which those companies have been investigating whether it's malicious or not. Many of them have been stealing money to the weapons program. So that's one type of fraud. And by the way, we see other nation states do that to their adversarial countries as well, just like we see in other cyber threats. A second type of organization are bad actor organizations, fraud groups that are well known. Some of them are called Scattered Spider. Some of them are called Lazarus. Those are groups that are known to devise highly complex and disruptive ransomware situations where they social engineer their way into organizations. They earn access, and then they hold the company ransom in one way or another. We saw it from SolarWinds a few years ago. We saw it with Log4j, and we have many more instances where these types of things happen. And third group are more individual bad actors that are trying to get into a company either to earn salaries at multiple companies, or they're trying to do the same job of a large fraud group but on their own. All three of them are dangerous in different severities and different complexities, and so there's enough motivation and momentum of bad actors to do what they do here.
That sounds super thorough and super intense. And it sounds like hopefully you folks are fully prepared for the threats that come all of our ways. Are there any ethical concerns, any regulatory hurdles that you folks have had to overcome, whether it's through privacy or through identity? What are some of the challenges that you folks are facing when you try and kind of sell this technology?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're dealing with very sensitive information. You know, when you talk about personally identifiable information, anything from the name and their address and email, all the way to, what they look like, all of that falls under a lot of scrutiny from regulators for very good reasons, and I'm very happy for that. I'm very glad to see how much attention companies are putting on this, and how the regulators are putting on this. And as a startup, we had to do everything from all of the SOC 2, GDPR, EU AI Act, CCPA, different types of certifications. It feels like every week we're discovering a new certification that we need to earn, and to get the trust and credibility from these enterprises. And by the way, we're also servicing large enterprises, so we have to go all the way to the most regulated industries, from financial services to healthcare. But we're not experiencing anything that's out of the ordinary to other AI companies that are dealing with personally identifiable information. And I'm proud that we're doing it in a way that both earns the trust of the enterprises and also earns the trust of the regulators, which is also not trivial. And it's an advantage that we've built our company and our technology with the regulators and with the enterprises, so that we're building it from the ground up with privacy in place.
Well, that's super interesting because I want to touch on another point that you've just kind of naturally led into, which is the policy and I mean, I kind of led you there with the regulation and ethics, but the policy behind it all. So, cybersecurity, as we mentioned earlier, is a famously fast adopting sector. You have to outrun the attackers, and you have to always keep up. But policy can be famously slow, so to enact. So, what are some of the things that you wish policymakers understood? Average age 75 in Congress or whatever it is in the US, and I don't know the average age in the EU, but that's slow enough anyway. So, what are some of the things that you would wish that policymakers knew about the kind of tech that you folks are up against?
They have a really important role to play here. And I think that their important role is that they need to do two things. One, they need to ensure that every technology that's being built for good purposes is built in a way that's responsible, ethical, unbiased, and can help promote society in the direction that at least the Western world thinks it should, right? And different countries have different standards and priorities. And we're building our company in line with the Western values of privacy and democracy and liberal free speech, etc. At the same time, the government and policymakers have the responsibility of catalyzing these defensive measures as much as possible. Because the downside of not doing that is that the bad actors will overtake the good actors, and then none of the policies will matter, right? So it's an
Exactly.
interesting game. They one hand, they have to ensure fairness and equality, and on the other hand, they have to ensure we run as fast as possible. And I think that they understand it, and I think that they are, in many ways, are not earning their potential here. I don't think that startups and companies that are innovating in general feel that we're getting the tools and the catalyzing nature that we need to move faster, more efficiently, and in a smarter way. I haven't met any entrepreneur that doesn't think that their technology needs to earn the credibility and the trust of the regulators and the privacy, and earn all of the certification. There's no doubt about that. At the same time, I think that the tools that are at our disposal are too infant, making it that we as entrepreneurs often see these hurdles as hurdles instead of as opportunities to run faster. And so you're creating this weird dynamic where if I want to move fast, I have to, in many ways, try to look at these, to ask myself, okay, what are shortcuts that we can take? And at the same time, I don't want to take shortcuts. I want to do everything by the book. And so ultimately, I don't think that entrepreneurs should be in that situation. I think that there could be a lot of ways in which regulators partner with startups and with other influencers to develop these programs and solutions so that a startup like Clarity that has to come now and earn their way into the EU AI Act trust. How do we partner to do that really, really well? How do we gain somebody from their end that looks at our architecture, advises us, identifies the loopholes that we may have missed or the blind spots that we have, and does it in a way that we can quickly fix it and move forward because all of us are under the same mission. And sometimes I hear from other entrepreneurs and myself that it feels like there's two different sides that are in conflict, whereas we should be in a partnership to get to the same place at the end.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I know that generally there's always been, it reminds me of a book that I read called Four Internets, and it outlines the four different, well, there are more than four, but it outlines four of potentially more than four different internet structures. And I don't want to go into all of them now because it'll take too much time, but one of them was the California Silicon Valley Innovation Internet. The other one was the Washington, D.C. surveillance, sorry, not surveillance, like policy internet. The EU was the regulation internet, and then China was the surveillance internet. So there are all of these different internets and all of these, at least four different hubs that are at conflict with each other. And one of the things that we touched on just now is that the average age of Congress on one side of the country is decades older than the average age of the entrepreneurs on the other side of the country. And they don't speak the same language, whether it's in tech or in policy or in understanding what a deepfake is. There are a lot of bridges that need closing there. And that's just in the States, right? That doesn't even speak about the EU and some of the barriers that need to overcome there. What are you folks and other companies like yours doing to lobby that and to bridge that gap? You said you guys need to find a way to work together. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that Clarity is a really young company. We're small. We're dedicating all of our resources to do what needs to be done and then service our customers. That's the two focuses we have. And so I wouldn't say that we're actively or I'm actively lobbying this. I know that other entrepreneurs are.
I said the word lobby. I don't think I meant like lobby. I meant like
Sure.
promoting and advocating for. I didn't mean lobby had like a DC tinge to it, which I don't want to accuse you of being a DC lobbyist just yet.
No, no, no. I wish that one day we will be big enough and important enough that my voice will be one that will be of value to also to DC amongst other governments. So that's definitely an ambition of mine. But I think that the biggest thing that we can do to promote it is to do it and to do it well and to not confront it, not to challenge it and disagree, but to disagree and commit and understand the importance of it and build our technology as fast as possible from the ground up that adheres to these policies and regulations, accept certain new regulations that are coming in, with open arms and with an understanding that they're important. And I think that by doing that, we are playing an important role amongst other companies to show regulators and policymakers that the role that startups can play here and that innovation can play is one that just promotes equality, promotes fairness and unbiased. Because they need to see that they have partners on our end, and we see the vibe and the tension that rises when they're interviewing, or many times it feels like interrogating a lot of the CEOs from Silicon Valley of the big tech companies. That doesn't seem like real partnership there. It seems like a different type of relationship, which is not conducive. So we're trying to build a generation here, I think, that as they will look at Clarity, which will hopefully be a big and beautiful and very profitable and high impact company, they'll see that we've been partners all along and we'll continue being partners.
What are some of the things that keep you up at night about AI?
The way in which children and teens are using it in their day to day to aid in their work and sometimes to compensate for critical thinking.
What are some of the ways that people are most misusing AI?
Replacing critical thinking with fast answers that and children not understanding that problem solving and independent decision making is a critical part of growing up.
Finally, when it comes to AI risk, what's more dangerous, ignorance or overconfidence?
Overconfidence.
Wow. I have one last question for you. What are the best ways for people to follow you, follow Clarity, and connect and keep in touch and see what you folks are up to?
My email is always open. It's very easy. It's michael@michaelmatias.com. And my LinkedIn is always open. I try to share my entrepreneurial journey there and our business journey as well. So everybody's welcome to follow.
Michael, thank you so much for taking the time today. It was super interesting. I hope people learned something. I hope people walked away a bit more aware of some of the threats that are out there and a bit more optimistic for the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James. Thank you.